My son-in-law married my daughter to take my house. He showed up after the wedding with a notary. At first, when you hear a sentence like that, it sounds like a line from a soap opera, something distant, exaggerated, almost unbelievable. But the truth is, reality often writes scripts far darker than fiction. And the question that lingers is this: how well do we really know the people who walk into our family? How often do we confuse polite smiles for genuine affection and promises of love for hidden contracts of interest? This is not just a story about one house. It's not only about bricks, walls, or property documents. It is about something deeper: trust, the foundation of every family, every relationship, every bond. And when that trust is broken, it isn't just the house that shakes. It's your heart, your health, your very ability to believe again. I remember standing by the window on the morning after the wedding. The flowers from the celebration were still fresh, scattered in corners of the house. The laughter of guests still echoed in my head. And then the knock at the door, a knock that would change everything. When I opened it, I didn't just see my daughter, radiant in her new role as a wife. No, I saw him standing proudly beside her, and next to him, a notary, papers in hand. A cold smile on his face, as if this moment had been planned long before. The vows were exchanged now. Stop for a moment and imagine this: the very home where you raised your children, where every corner holds memories of birthdays, Christmas dinners, sleepless nights, and warm embraces, suddenly reduced to a signature on a document. How would you feel? Would your legs give way beneath you? Would your heart pound so fast you'd struggle to breathe? Because betrayal doesn't just break you emotionally, it attacks your body like poison in the bloodstream. Studies show that stress, especially the kind that comes from deep personal betrayal, can constrict blood vessels, raise blood pressure, weaken circulation, and even accelerate joint pain. It's as if your body reacts to the emotional wound with a physical one. And this is where I pause to speak directly to you. Have you ever ignored the small signs? A glance that lingered too long on your possessions? A comment disguised as a joke about your money, your land, your comfort? We brush them off because we want to believe in love, in good intentions. But sometimes those little signs are alarms ringing quietly, trying to warn us before the storm arrives. And when we silence those alarms, we pay the price. I wish I could say this was only about me, about one family. But I know it isn't. Perhaps you've been through something similar. Perhaps not with a house, but with your health, your friendships, your independence. Someone took advantage of your trust, and you felt it not only in your heart, but also in your body. Sleepless nights, tension in your chest, a heaviness in your legs. That is the hidden cost of betrayal. So why am I telling you this? Because this story is more than just a family drama. It's a wake-up call. A reminder that we must protect not only our property, but also our well-being. That we must be attentive, not paranoid, but aware. Because the greatest pain isn't losing a house, it's losing peace of mind. The calm that allows your heart to beat steadily, your blood to flow freely, your body to move without the weight of constant worry. And here's the truth. When he arrived with that notary, he thought he was clever. He thought he would catch me unprepared, weakened by the joy of seeing my daughter married. But he underestimated something far greater than a legal document. He underestimated resilience. He underestimated the power of someone who has lived long enough to know that not all battles are fought with signatures. Some are fought with wisdom, patience, and the determination to protect what truly matters. That's why I invite you to stay with me. Because what happened next will make you question not just this marriage, but the way betrayal can creep silently into our lives. And if you've ever felt that sting of broken trust, you'll understand why this story might feel like your own. And before we continue, let me ask you for something small but important. If you feel these stories matter, if you too believe we need to talk about the hidden wounds behind family ties, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. That way, more people can hear these lessons, and together we can keep our voices strong, because this is only the beginning. The knock at the door was just the first act. It's a real revelation. It's yet to come. Asterisk, the knock at the door had already unsettled me, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw when I opened it. My daughter stood there, her hands still adorned with the delicate flowers from the wedding bouquet, her smile bright but somehow different. Less innocent, more practiced, as though she were playing a role in a theater I hadn't bought tickets for. And beside her, my son-in-law, not holding her hand tenderly as you'd expect from a newlywed, but gripping a folder tight under his arm. The kind of folder you only see when contracts, deeds, and cold transactions are involved. And then, the man in the suit, the notary. His presence alone was enough to send a shiver through me. Because notaries don't come for celebrations. They don't arrive with laughter or flowers. They come for signatures. It's for permanence. For the kind of changes you cannot undo. At that moment, my heart didn't just beat faster. It stumbled, skipped, as though it too had been betrayed. I could feel the weight in my chest, the kind of heaviness that makes you hold onto the door frame for support. Do you know that feeling? When your body seems to betray you in moments of shock? Your legs weaken, your palms sweat, your vision narrows as if the world has suddenly closed in. That was me, standing there in my own doorway. In the very house I had built, brick by brick, memory by memory. And as I struggled to steady myself, I realized something chilling. This had been planned, okay? Long before the wedding vows, long before. The champagne and the music. Every smile, every word, every gesture from him, all rehearsed. Not for love, but for ownership. He hadn't married my daughter for her heart. He had married her for my roof, my walls, my land. And the notary was there to make sure his plan had legal ink to seal it. I invited them in, though my voice trembled. My daughter looked at me, eyes glimmering with something I couldn't quite read. Was it guilt? Was it complicity? Or was it blindness, wrapped in the hope of a husband's promises? I couldn't tell, but I knew in that instant that everything had changed. The notary placed the folder on the table, his fingers moving with the precision of someone used to dismantling families with paperwork. He began to speak in that calm, detached tone, explaining procedures, rights, signatures needed. His voice was the sound of authority, legal, but not moral. My son-in-law smiled at me across the table as if this was all perfectly natural, as if I should simply accept that what I had worked for, sweated for, sacrificed for, now belonged to him through a few strokes of ink. And here's where the lesson cuts. Deep betrayal doesn't always arrive with raised voices or arguments. Sometimes it comes dressed in formality, in polite words, in documents filled with small letters and hidden intentions. And that's why it's so dangerous, because while you are still trying to understand the why, they are already executing the how. I felt my blood pressure rise, the pounding in my temples like drums of war. Stress does that. It doesn't knock politely, it invades. It makes your veins constrict, your circulation struggle, your joints ache as if your very bones are resisting the weight of what is happening. It's no coincidence that many who suffer betrayal fall ill soon after, because the body and the soul are one. And what destroys the heart soon begins to destroy the flesh. And yet, as I sat there, I remembered something important. The house wasn't just wood and stone. It was a symbol of my resilience, of decades of endurance. And I knew that if I allowed them to take it easily, I wouldn't just lose property. I would lose the will to fight for myself. So I watched, I listened, I let them speak. And while they thought they were in control, a plan began to form in my mind. Because sometimes the best response to betrayal is not anger at first sight, but patience, to wait, to observe, to learn exactly how deep their intentions go. And that, my friends, is why I want you to keep listening. Because what unfolded in that living room in the hours that followed, was not just a battle over property. It was a battle over dignity, over the very essence of family, and over the health of my soul. And as the story continues, you will see that every choice I made that day carried a consequence, not only for me, but for them as well. So stay with me, because the next step in this tale will show you just how far betrayal can reach, and how a single decision can turn the tables in ways no notary, no paper, no false smile could ever predict. The notary's pen tapped lightly against the folder, a sound so small, yet it echoed in my chest like a hammer. My son-in-law leaned back in his chair, too comfortable for a guest in my house. His smile too wide for a man who had just joined our family. He thought the battle was already won. He thought the paper in front of me was stronger than the decades I had spent building this home, stronger than the love and effort carved into every corner of these walls. He didn't know yet that silence can sometimes be sharper than shouting. I looked at my daughter. Her hands trembled, though she tried to hide it by folding them tightly on her lap. Her eyes flicked back and forth between me and her husband, as if she were torn in two directions. For a moment, I saw the little girl she once was, running barefoot through the halls, calling for me when she had nightmares, resting her head on my shoulder. And now that same daughter sat before me, caught between love and betrayal, or perhaps blinded by promises I didn't yet know. My heart ached, not only for my house, but for her. Because if she was complicit, then the betrayal was double, and if she was innocent, then she was trapped. The notary began to read, his voice steady, emotionless. He spoke of transfer, of rights, of ownership. Each word was like a knife, not because of what it meant legally, but because of what it meant symbolically. It was as if he were erasing me from my own life. As if with one stroke of ink I could become a guest in the very home where my entire story had unfolded. And yet I remained silent. Not because I was weak, but because silence makes people nervous. My son-in-law expected anger, shouting, resistance. He wanted a confrontation he could twist into justification. Instead, I gave him calm, a calm so deep it unsettled even me. I let him speak, let the notary explain, let the papers rest heavily on the table between us. "Father," my daughter said finally, her voice soft, almost pleading. She avoided my eyes. "It's better this way. For everyone, he knows how to take care of things. He'll manage the house, manage the house." Such simple words, yet behind them, an earthquake. How many times in life do we accept betrayal wrapped in polite sentences? How often does someone use phrases like, "It's for the best," "It's just business," "You'll understand later," to justify what is nothing more than selfishness disguised as reason? Those words are poison when they come from strangers. But when they come from your own flesh and blood, they become unbearable. I looked at her husband, the so-called manager. He smirked, as though her words had been rehearsed, placed gently into her mouth by his persuasion. And at that moment, something inside me shifted. The pain, the pressure in my chest, the tightness in my veins, they began to transform. Into rage, not into despair, but into something colder, sharper, resolve. You see, betrayal has two paths. One leads to collapse. The heart weakens, the body gives up, the soul retreats. The other leads to strength, to strategy, to a calm, patience that watches and waits for the right moment to turn everything around. I chose the second, not because I wanted revenge, but because I refused to let betrayal define me. So I sat back, folded my hands, and spoke with a steadiness that surprised even me. This house is not just wood and stone. It is the history of our family. Few believe it can be signed away so easily. Then you understand nothing of what was built here. The notary cleared his throat, uncomfortable. My son-in-law leaned forward, ready to counter, but for the first time I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He hadn't expected resistance that wasn't loud but firm. He hadn't expected me to be calm, to measure my words like a blade instead of a storm. And that's when I realized cracks were forming. His confidence wasn't unshakable. His plan wasn't flawless. And my daughter. Her silence, her trembling. Hands, they told me she wasn't as certain as he wanted her to be. It is in these cracks that light enters. It is in these fractures that strength is reborn. And as I looked at them both, I knew that what seemed like the end of my story might just be the beginning of theirs unraveling. Because betrayal, no matter how carefully crafted, carries within it the seed of its own destruction. All it takes is time. Stay with me, because what followed after this silent confrontation was a turning point. The battle had only begun, and in the next chapter, you'll see how the cracks widened, how their plan began to falter, and how, step by step, the house they tried to claim became the very stage for their undoing. Asterisk, the silence after my words hung heavy in the air, so thick you could almost hear it. My son-in-law tried to mask his unease with a forced chuckle, leaning forward in his chair, as if by closing the distance between us he could assert dominance. With all due respect, he said, his voice carrying that false sweetness that always hides something rotten underneath. This house needs proper management. Times are changing. The neighborhood is changing. Shouldn't have to worry. About the stress of ownership at your age, I can handle it. For you, for the family, for the family. Those words, so sharp in their irony, struck me harder than any shout ever could. Because when betrayal comes, it rarely admits its true face. It comes cloaked in excuses, in the language of duty, of responsibility, of care. But if you look closely, if you truly listen, you can hear the greed behind the syllables, the hunger behind the smile. And in that moment, as his eyes betrayed a glimmer of arrogance, I saw it clear as day. He wasn't here to help. He was here to take. The notary shifted uncomfortably, perhaps sensing that this was no simple transaction. My daughter sat frozen, her hands now gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white. She didn't defend him this time. Jay didn't echo his words. She just looked at me, eyes wide, as though silently begging me to find the strength she no longer had. I leaned back, my breathing steady now, though my heart still pounded. Stress has a way of making every beat of your heart sound louder, every muscle tense as though preparing for battle. And make no mistake, this was a battle, not of fists or weapons, but of wills, of endurance, of clarity against manipulation. And in that kind of war, silence and patience are stronger than shouting. See? I said softly, my voice calm, deliberate, like water carving stone. So you believe this house, the one I built from nothing, should belong to you? You believe years of work, sacrifice, and love can be reduced to a line on a piece of paper. He smirked, confident again, mistaking my calm for surrender. That's how the world works. Paper doesn't lie. But here was his mistake. Greed blinds. And when a man believes paper is stronger than principle, he reveals his hand too soon. That arrogance, that belief in his own cleverness, was the first true crack in his plan. I studied him quietly, and as I did, I noticed something else. His hands. He tapped his fingers restlessly on the folder, his wedding band glinting under the light. A nervous habit, perhaps. Or was it excitement? Either way, it betrayed something deeper. Impatience. And impatience is the enemy of every scheme. Because, while patience watches, waits, and grows sharper. Impatience forces moves too early, reveals intentions too clearly. Paper may not lie. I replied, meeting his gaze steadily, but neither does memory. And this house is filled with memories that are stronger than any ink. The notary cleared his throat again, looking between us, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. Even he seemed to sense that this was no ordinary signing, but the opening. Scene of a storm, my daughter finally spoke, her voice trembling. Maybe we should wait. Maybe this isn't the right time. And there it was, the hesitation. A seed planted in her heart. A whisper of doubt cracking through the shell of her husband's manipulation. He turned sharply toward her, his jaw tightening, his mask slipping. For the first time, his voice colder now, almost a hiss. "We've already discussed this. It's the right time. Has to be now." I caught it. That urgency, that desperation. He wasn't just greedy. He was cornered by something I didn't yet understand. And desperation always reveals more than intended. That was the moment I knew the balance was shifting. He wasn't as secure as he pretended. His plan wasn't as flawless as he wanted me to believe. And with every word, every flicker of impatience, he was showing me the path to unraveling him. Because here's the truth. Betrayal carries within it a poison that always spreads inward. It rots the one who betrays from the inside, faster than it wounds the one betrayed. And the cracks I saw forming in that room weren't just in his plan, they were in him. Stay with me. Because what happened next will show you the power of waiting, of watching, of letting arrogance destroy itself. His mask was slipping, and the man behind it was far more fragile than he ever wanted us to see. The air in the room grew heavy, almost suffocating, as if the very walls of the house could sense the struggle unfolding within them. My son-in-law's jaw tightened after my daughter dared to question him, his smile fading into something darker, something more real. He turned to her quickly, his voice firm, carrying that edge that is meant to control rather than convince. "We've already agreed on this," he said, each word sharp, almost rehearsed. "It's the right time, and we can't delay." And that's when I knew he had said too much. We can't delay. Why? Why the rush? Why was urgency pressing down on him like a weight he couldn't carry? If his intentions were pure, if this was about care and responsibility, there would be no rush. Love is patient. Protection is patient. But greed? Greed is always in a hurry because it fears discovery. It fears that if you look too closely, you'll see the cracks. I leaned forward, slowly, my eyes fixed on him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Calmness unsettles the guilty, more than anger ever can. "Why now?" I asked simply. "What is it that makes this moment so urgent?" He faltered. Just for a second. His lips parted, then closed. His eyes flicked toward the notary, searching for support, but found none. The notary, already uneasy, avoided his gaze, busying himself with the papers, his pen trembling slightly between his fingers. My son-in-law cleared his throat, forced a laugh. "Well, it's just better to do things while everything is fresh. Right after the wedding, before complications arise. That's all." But it wasn't convincing. It wasn't solid. It was the first lie spoken aloud. And lies, once they leave the mouth, have a way of echoing. My daughter noticed it too. Her brow furrowed, her lips tightening as if she had just caught a shadow of truth slipping out. For the first time, she looked at him not with blind devotion, but with suspicion. That's the thing about betrayal, it needs absolute trust to survive. Once doubt enters, even the smallest seed, it begins to grow, to push against the walls of lies until everything collapses. And I had just planted that seed with one simple question. Why now? He tried to recover, speaking quickly, too quickly, words spilling out like water from a broken jug. "Look, we're thinking of the future of stability. It's better to have everything organized, legally secure. That way, nobody can come later and cause problems. Nobody can come later." Another slip, another crack. My mind sharpened. Who exactly did he mean? Who would come later? Who was he so afraid of? My daughter tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing. "What do you mean? Nobody can come later?" she asked softly. And there it was, the second seed of doubt. This one planted not by me, but by his own impatience. He had revealed too much. He shifted in his chair, his fingers drumming faster against the folder, his eyes flashing with irritation. I mean nothing. Just people, neighbors, relatives. You know how it is. Everyone always has an opinion. It's better to have things clear, that the words were rushed, unconvincing. And my daughter's silence told me she wasn't satisfied. The bond of trust between them was beginning to stretch thin, like glass about to shatter. I sat back, watching. My heart still pounded. Yes, but now with a different rhythm, not the panic of defeat, but the pulse of clarity. My blood still ran hot, my chest still tight, but it wasn't weakness anymore. It was resolve. And I realized something important. Sometimes you don't need to fight betrayal with direct resistance. Sometimes you only need to let the betrayer speak long enough for his own words to betray him. Because the more he spoke, the more he revealed. The urgency, the fear, the slips of the tongue, they were painting a picture clearer than any confession. And I knew then that the true reason behind his rush was close to surfacing. I looked at him, my voice steady, almost kind. Strange, isn't it? That after a wedding, when most men would be dreaming of their honeymoon, their future, their new life with their bride, you are here with a notary desperate for signatures. I let the words sink in, let them cut through the air like a blade. Tell me, is this truly about family? Or is it about something else entirely? His face stiffened, his composure cracked. He opened his mouth, ready to respond, but no words came. Instead, he looked to my daughter as though hoping she would speak for him, cover the hole he had dug. But she remained silent, her eyes locked on him, her doubt now undeniable. And in that silence, I saw it clearly, the unraveling had begun. The confidence he had carried into my home was slipping away, thread by thread. And soon, very soon, the truth he had tried to bury beneath charm and papers would rise to the surface. Stay with me. Because what comes next is the moment his mask begins to fall completely. And the hidden truth behind his urgency comes dangerously. Close to the light, asterisk, the silence that followed my words was heavier than any argument. My son-in-law stared at me, his lips pressed tight, his jaw flexing as though he were grinding his teeth beneath the skin. His fingers no longer drummed on the folder, they clenched it, as if gripping it tighter would stop the cracks spreading across his plan. My daughter, still silent, kept her eyes locked on him. And in that silence, her gaze became a mirror, forcing him to face what he had tried so desperately to hide. Finally, he spoke. His voice lower, harsher, stripped of the polite sweetness he had worn like a mask. You don't understand, he said, leaning forward. This isn't just about the house. It's about security. It's about making sure debts don't swallow us whole. Debts, the word slipped out like poison, like a truth he had been choking on. My daughter's head turned sharply toward him, her eyes widening. Debts, she repeated, her voice trembling. What debts? And there it was. The crack became a fracture. The fracture, a collapse. He tried to recover, stumbling over his words. It's nothing, just business. Vestments that didn't go the way I planned. I just need to stabilize things and the house. The house would have secured everything. The house. My house. Not his. Not theirs. Mine. Built with decades of sweat, sacrifice, sleepless nights, and endless effort. And now, in a single breath, he revealed the truth. He had married not for love, not for family, but for collateral. My daughter wasn't a bride in his eyes. She was a key, a bridge, a means to reach what was never his. I watched the realization dawn on her face. The way her hand slowly slipped from the table, falling to her lap as though she had lost all strength. Her lips parted, but no words came, only silence, heavy and wounded. And in that silence, her marriage crumbled before it had even truly begun. My son-in-law turned to her quickly, desperation flashing in his eyes. Listen, I did it for us, for our future. You don't understand how much pressure I've been under. The house was the only way out, but it was too late. You see, when someone reveals their true face, there's no putting the mask back on. Once trust shatters, you can't glue it together again. And as he spoke, I could feel the weight lifting from Minot, the pain of betrayal. That remained, but the clarity of knowing exactly what I was facing. No more guessing, no more shadows. The enemy had stepped into the light. The notary, clearly uncomfortable now, began to gather his papers, muttering that perhaps this wasn't the right time. His eyes darted to the door, eager to escape the suffocating tension. Even he knew this had become something darker than a simple signing. I leaned forward, my voice steady, slow, deliberate. So that is the truth. You stood at the altar, promising love and loyalty, not to my daughter, but to my house. You married not a woman, but a roof, not a heart, but bricks. And now, with debts circling around you, you dare come here in my home and demand ownership as if I were a fool who couldn't see through your lies. He opened his mouth, but the words died in his throat. For the first time since he arrived, he looked small, not powerful, not confident, but cornered. His eyes darted between me and my daughter, searching for escape, but finding none. My daughter finally found her voice. It cracked, fragile, but resolute. "You used me?" she whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. "You used my love to steal from my own family." Her words cut deeper than any of mine could, 'cause betrayal sounds different when spoken by the betrayed. It pierces the heart in ways no argument ever can. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away sharply, her chair scraping against the floor as she stood. The sound echoed like thunder in the room. And in that moment, his plan collapsed, not because of me. Not because of the notary, but because the very person he had manipulated saw the truth with her own eyes. I stood too, my body trembling not from weakness, but from the weight of the moment. My chest still tight, my blood still hot, but this time it was not stress, it was strength. It's the kind of strength that comes when the truth finally reveals itself. "You came here with papers," I said, pointing at the folder in his hands. "But papers burn, and the only thing that survives is what is built on honesty. You will never own this house, 'cause this house was not built for greed, it was built for family, okay? And you have no place in it." The notary excused himself quickly, slipping out the door, leaving the folder on the table. My daughter stood frozen, tears streaming silently, while my son-in-law's mask fell completely, leaving behind a pale, desperate man stripped of his arrogance. And as he sat there, defeated in the very room he tried to conquer, I realized something profound. Betrayal, no matter how cunning, always contains the seeds of its own downfall. Greed blinds, arrogance exposes. And the truth, though slow, always finds its way to the surface. This was not the end of the story, far from it. This was the beginning of a reckoning, a journey not only to protect my home, but to heal my daughter, to restore what betrayal had tried to destroy. So stay with me, because the collapse of his plan was only the first act. The real story, the fight for dignity, the lessons about resilience, and the healing of wounds deeper than paper was just beginning. And if you, listening now, have ever felt betrayed, ever felt your trust turned into someone else's weapon, let this remind you, you are stronger than you think. And the truth, though it hurts, always sets you free.